All right, hey, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Today is Saturday, August 28th, 2021. This is your daily tropical update. Well, we continue to focus mostly on Hurricane Ida, now in the Gulf of Mexico and set to begin to rapidly strengthen on her approach to the Louisiana and Mississippi Gulf Coast by tomorrow afternoon, where a major hurricane is still likely to strike. I'm going to get to that most of the video, but real quick, I wanted to mention we do have a new tropical depression in the Atlantic. Just real quick, TD10 out here in the central Atlantic system expected to move northward and is forecast to become a tropical storm. It's kind of getting beat up still by some wind shear, but it's doing its best. I give it credit. Um, Short-lived tropical storm, probably going to dissipate over the central Atlantic, and will be taking up a name, but will be no storm of consequence to the U.S. and not much else going on. There's another system that's probably going to just kind of mess around, maybe get named too, and then we're going to be watching that African wave train pick back up in September. But for now, it looks like Ida is the big player in town. So let's go ahead and talk about Ida. New day with the storm, and so far I don't want to call it good news, but at least like it's not horrible news. I'm not on here like delivering even more horrible news. For now, Ida has not begun to rapidly strengthen just yet. Now, I'm recording this at about 10 minutes to 12. At any point after this, it could just start going off. So I want to make that clear. But in the previous about 12, 15 hours since she left Cuba, we really haven't seen it just take off yet. Maximum sustained winds remain 85 miles an hour today, and movement is still to the northwest at about 16 miles an hour. The thing with this is that yes, it has not rapidly intensified yet, but the structure of the storm has greatly improved. So that's going to be able to start letting it rapidly intensify at any time, and it's still very likely to be a major hurricane when it makes landfall on Sunday. So I'm going to show you those hurricane watches and warnings, also the tropical storm warnings. In red are the hurricane warnings. These are from Intracoastal City to the mouth of the Mississippi. This includes Lake Pontchartrain, Lake Maurepas, and Metropolitan New Orleans. But out to the west from Intercoastal City to Cameron are tropical storm warnings now. The hurricane watches have been dropped, and then tropical storm warnings are also up for Mississippi and Alabama's Gulf Coast. Those hurricane watches also dropped. So the hurricane effects are going to stay to where you see in red as far as the winds go. Where the tropical storm force winds again extend pretty far out. So I mean, you're talking about from the Alabama border to Cameron, Louisiana. That's a pretty good wind field for tropical storm conditions, and very possible to get those sort of conditions. So, new Hurricane Center forecast track has not changed at all. It's been pretty much rock steady since it came out, and that landfall location is still likely from Grand Isle to to the east of Vermilion Bay. Probably Morgan City is probably who's going to probably get this right on the nose. And again, that's just where the eye is going to pass. It does not really affect how much the wind field and the surge and all that gets into, which we'll talk impacts pretty shortly. So, long looping infrared satellite shot showing Ida since she left Cuba last night. A couple big deep convective bursts. You see these kind of like twin bursts in the blacks and reds. You'll see one here, two big bursts, and they kind of chase each other around. And then it almost solidified, but then it didn't. And then you see a new two bursts come up, and they try to chase each other. It is struggling a little bit, and this is the thing about hurricane science. We don't know why some storms just go off. Like say down here where it's not nearly as warm water. It's okay, it's very warm water, but it's a lot closer to land, and it just doesn't look like somewhere you would expect rapid intensification. Then the storm does, and it gets out here where it's like, all right, here you go, all systems go, go for it, and it just kind of hangs out for 12 hours. And we don't really know exactly what governs that snap process because at some point the switch is just going to flip today and it's just going to go off and it's just going to be intensifying, intensifying. And it's going to be like, whoa, here it is. But it hasn't yet for whatever reason. So this is one of the things the science still has to work on, and we still don't fully understand. But I don't want to make it sound like, oh, Ida's a pushover now and it's just going to not be a problem. But it is good news that the storm has spent about 12 to 15 hours not rapidly intensifying. If it had started last night, then like category 5 was absolutely on the table. Now I'm not so sure about that because it's taken a lot of time. Now, a lot of deepening can again occur between now and then. The upper level environment continues to be beautiful for the storm. Water vapor satellite imagery showing this low pressure, the little low we've been talking about, getting kind of squeezed now. But notice how far back the negative tilt on the storm is. And now, like I said, it's pulling the wind away from the top of the storm and really allowing it to breathe and expand that beautiful cirrus outflow. That the cirrus outflow goes all the way from New Orleans and Louisiana all the way down to like Central and South America. I mean, it's a gorgeous cirrus outflow canopy, and indicating the storm has no problems in the upper levels at all. The only thing I can maybe see is maybe there's some southerly wind shear from this trough that might be aggravating the backside of the storm. It's the only thing I can even imagine is bothering this system at all. We've covered most of the issues about the strengthening phase, and I'm not going to go back into them too much. But again, the GFS indicating plenty of low and mid-level moisture for the storm on approach. Um, Maybe a little bit of dry air may entrain towards the coast. There's a little bit of dry air down here in the Gulf. Maybe some of this works in. Not super sold on it. And again, the oceanic heat content piece. Ida left Cuba and has been tracking over pretty warm deep water, but she's right about here today. And what's ahead is the warmest, deepest water in the Gulf of Mexico. This is jet fuel for a hurricane. So she's about to hit this, and this period, this afternoon through tomorrow morning, is probably your biggest intensity jump you're going to see. And then it'll probably stay a little more level towards land because the shallower shelf waters and the slow forward speed may allow it to upwell a little bit. But this is where she's going to become a major hurricane, is over this patch of really deep warm water to come. hwarf kind of shows this pretty well. hwarf has it landfalling. It's still in the 940s, which is pretty spectacular. But it just goes to show how fast this can deepen. It's a little initializing Ida a little better than it actually is. The pressure is a little closer, like 987. hwarf has it closer to 984. But hwarf by this afternoon, 974, 967, this 962, 959. This is all over that loop current patch that I was just telling you about, that oceanic heat patch, and it drops like 20 millibars. That's the bottom falling out of the storm. I mean, that is a whale of an intensification phase, and then it goes all the way into the 940s. And again, I'm a little skeptical it'll carry this much rapid intensification all the way up, but it could. We are in the phase, and we are in the environment where it could do that. So please don't sleep on the storm because it hasn't quite gone off yet. Tensing models have not, or track models have not changed. Again, the Hurricane Center's track is locked in. This is not going to change. Um, the intensity models have come back a little bit. They're a little more towards Cat 3, Cat 4. Notice how the Hurricane Center are currently sitting above all the intensity model guidance right now, but this guidance is a little finicky and subject to fluctuations. As soon as she begins to rapidly intensify, that guidance will come right back up. So I don't care for these models too much. I show them, they're useful sometimes. I'm not a big fan. They're way too finicky for me. Let's go ahead and get into the impacts. Sunday morning is when tropical storm force winds can be on station. So your preparations need to be done tonight. Please do not spare any preparations. Get everything done you can. Throw your entire hurricane plan into this, but you got to be done tonight. If you're leaving, you got to leave tonight. If you're staying, you got to be hunkered down tonight, because tomorrow by the midday you're going to have tropical storm force winds on station. Those outer bands, you have gusty winds, potential for tornadoes, heavy rain that's going to cause some localized flash flooding, and you're going to have that wind that could potentially close bridges, knock out power, uproot trees or tree limbs and stuff. I mean, it's going to start becoming dangerous by Sunday midday, early afternoon. So you know that's it. That's the time you got to be out of there. All right, storm surge has not changed. Again, storm surge is tied to the storm's size and intensity. So intensity is not just the whole picture of storm surge. The size of the storm is a big deal. Like when Katrina hit, you remember how Katrina, quote, weakened back to a 3? Well, Katrina still had a gigantic wind field and 920 bar millibar pressure. That's why Katrina was able to set a U.S. record with storm surge of 27 feet in this region. Now, Ida is not going to be able to do that because Ida isn't quite that big or that well pronounced yet, but the storm will be getting bigger as it approaches, and it's still going to be a major hurricane. So we are still talking 10 to 15 feet of storm surge, which is catastrophic, and it is unsurvivable near the coast. 7 to 11 feet around the sound here and the entrance to eastern Louisiana. I mean, even 4 to 7 feet as far out as the Mississippi Alabama border. I mean, 6 to 9 feet near Intracoastal City. It's going to be a huge water rise at the coast, and this area is really susceptible. This is the Hurricane Center's potential storm surge inundation map, and notice how anything in the orange or red is 6 to 9 feet water rise. We notice how much of this water could be rising around New Orleans. Now, there's a levee system, there's a bit of a wall system, but I mean, even inland, I mean, Lake Pontchartrain, Lake Maurepas, look at how much water rises around there. Look how far this water can carry up into these bayous. It can carry into Morgan City. Now, the city is probably built up a little bit, but I mean, this whole region could potentially be underwater for several hours. I mean, it's going to be a hell of a storm surge coming with this storm, and this is the number one thing that kills in these storms. The other thing that kills is water from the form of rainfall, flooding rain. Flooding rainfall threat still pretty spectacular with the storm. 10 to 15 inches of rain forecast for southeast Louisiana. And like I've said before, anytime you see a number, say you see 13.87 inches and that's stamped, that's the one of the highest things the model thinks is going to happen. You have to expect you can get up to double that. Tropical storms, sometimes rain bands just pick you and they say screw you and they dump you and dump you and dump you and dump you. Well, when that happens, you can start quickly exceeding what the general area can see in rainfall, and you could get 15 to 20 inches, 20 plus in some cases. Some poor soul in southeast Louisiana on a bayou is going to get 24 inches of rain probably. I mean, I'm serious. That's it's horrible. But that's just how it is. But even in the widespread, a foot of rain combined with this kind of storm surge and the fact that all this water is surging in and then the rain's trying to get out and it can't, and this is just where it comes up. Weather Prediction Center has a high chance of excessive rainfall tomorrow. I mean, this is the highest outlook categorically they can issue. It's going to be a pretty big deal, and the flooding threat has got to be taken seriously, both here at the coastline and then even well in. Look at these, 4 to 8 inch rainfall totals extending all the way through Mississippi and into even parts of Tennessee. I mean, this can cause pretty significant flooding. So what eastern Arkansas, into Kentucky, into the Virginias. I mean, it's going to be a lot of rainfall associated with the storm well away from the coast. Winds still to come. I mean, European right now calling wind gusts well into the 115, 125 mile an hour range, very possible. Though sustained winds are around 130, that typically translates to about that in gusts. Euro could be even a little underdoing the winds, but I wanted to really illustrate the wind's not so much the immediate landfall. I mean, it's a major hurricane. You're going to get hellacious wind. It's just I can't. But I wanted to illustrate a couple points real quick. Notice how New Orleans on the edge of those hurricane force wind gusts. I mean, you're talking about the gradient that New Orleans is sitting on is very fine. If the system tracks just a little bit closer to Grand Isle, you're getting a hurricane, no doubt about it. If it tracks a little further on the west side towards the bay, towards Intracoastal City, you're probably not getting a hurricane. You're probably getting a tropical storm as far as the wind speeds are concerned. So this won't terribly affect the surge because of the shape of the coastline and the direction that the storm approaches. The surge is coming no matter what. But you're on that fine line. So New Orleans, you could get anywhere from strong tropical storm force winds to a bona fide hurricane. It's going to come down to pretty small micromanages that are pretty hard to track. But yeah, near the coast, 100, 120, 130, gusts probably even over 130 are very likely in some areas. They probably won't get measured by instrumentation because this is pretty sparsely, observed area, but it's still a big deal. But rain or winds inland. I mean, look at the hurricane force winds carrying into southwest Mississippi and into northern Louisiana, where hurricane force wind gusts are possible into central and northern Mississippi. I mean, 70-mile-an-hour wind gusts possible way up here. When you have a storm that's quickly deepening on approach and is intensifying up until landfall versus weakening at landfall, intensifying storms up to landfall typically carry their winds much further inland than weakening at landfall does. And then a big swath of tropical storm force winds is possible. Northern Alabama, Tennessee, northern Georgia. I mean, a lot of people are going to get some pretty nasty winds from this well inland. I always stress to respect former tropical storms as they move inland. They can be a big deal. Last thing is tornadoes. Storm Prediction Center does note that the tornado threat is pretty decent with this one, and they have a 5% hashing for southeast Louisiana and southern Mississippi. You will very likely see tropical or tornado watches go up tomorrow afternoon. In their discussion for the region, they do admit that the buoyancy remains to be seen. Really, with tropical storms, the buoyancy and the dew point is what really kind of governs how much you can get in the way of tornadoes. But storms like Katrina, Gustav, and Ike in this region all produce enormous tornadoes, with Katrina producing 59. I mean, these are historical analogs that do favor an increased chance of tornadoes. So in addition to the wind, to the rain, to the surge, to the flooding, you're also going to have tornadoes to deal with. And these are fast and tropical systems that can hit almost with little to no warning. They're very difficult to see on radar because the whole atmosphere is already spinning. So tornadoes are a big threat here, as well as every other thing here. So if you stayed, this is the kind of stuff you're going to have to deal with, and the effects could be not only very dire tomorrow when it makes landfall and Monday morning and before it moves out, but then you're gonna have to deal with the power outages and all that comes with it. So and guys, what I got for you this morning on Ida, we'll be back this evening to recap all this and see how she looks like. The intensification, I expect to see a much healthier storm, a much stronger storm by this evening. So we'll see. So folks on the Gulf Coast, stay safe. Please finish your preparations. Please take this seriously. Please get to higher ground if you're near the coast. And we'll talk soon. So until then, stay safe and thanks for watching.